Today, we're diving into a fascinating text called Grilhões Partidos, which translates to broken chains, and it offers a really unique spiritual take on one of the most terrifying mysteries out there. What happens when a person's mind just shatters, seemingly out of nowhere?
So picture this. We're in a fancy apartment in Rio de Janeiro. A huge, lavish party is underway for a young woman named Esther on her 15th birthday. And as the book describes her, she is the absolute picture of perfection. She's happy, beautiful, from a great family. I mean, this is supposed to be the best night of her life.
She's surrounded by everyone she loves, and she sits down at the piano to play for her guests. She starts a beautiful piece by Brahms. And in that one instant, this perfect, idyllic evening completely falls apart.
The source describes this just horrifying transformation. Her body tenses up like she's been hit by an electric shock, her face goes completely pale, her eyes fill with this sheer terror, and she just locks onto her father. And then she stands up, walks right toward him, and with absolutely no warning, strikes him, hard, right across the face, in front of everyone. The party just explodes into chaos as this beloved daughter continues this shocking, completely bizarre assault.
So what on earth just happened to Esther? You can imagine the family's confusion, their despair. Was it a sudden illness? Some kind of psychological break? This question becomes the central mystery that her family, and our source text, is desperately trying to solve.
Well, the family's first instinct, naturally, was to find a conventional answer. So they turned to the world they understood, modern medicine.
And her journey through the psychiatric system was, well, it was a rapid downhill slide. What started as a diagnosis of a hysterical crisis on the night of the party got a lot more serious really fast. They moved her to a sanatorium, but she only got worse. After a month, all the treatments, including even electroshock therapy, had totally failed. Her doctors were just stumped, and they delivered this absolutely devastating final verdict.
That final label was schizophrenia. In the text, it's described as this huge, challenging puzzle for science, and for Esther, a life sentence to a state of irreversible madness. But here's the thing. According to our source material, this diagnosis was only looking at the effect, not the real cause.
And this slide just perfectly lays out the book's central argument. On one side, you've got the psychiatric view. The symptoms, the aggression, the psychosis are all coming from a brain that's somehow broken. But on the other side, you have the spiritual view from the book. And it says the problem isn't coming from inside her at all. It's coming from an external, unseen aggressor, acting on her because of debts from a past life. So, this brings us to the absolute heart of the spiritual explanation. The book introduces this core concept, something it calls obsessive alienation.
So what does obsessive alienation even mean? Well, the book argues it's when discarnate spirits interfere in our lives. The core idea is that your personality doesn't just poof, disappear when you die. So spirits can still hold on to really powerful emotions, like anger or a thirst for revenge, and they can attach themselves to the living, influencing their thoughts and their actions.
Now get this, what's so wild about this slide is this quote from some foundational spiritist literature. It describes almost exactly what the family was seeing in Esther. It wasn't just that she was sick, it felt like another intelligence had grabbed the controls, using her body to lash out with a rage that just wasn't hers.
But why? You have to ask, why would a spirit do this? The text is really clear. This is not some random ghostly attack. No, it's presented as a matter of cosmic justice, a chain of cause and effect that stretches way back, beyond this lifetime.
The book lays out this whole sequence, kind of like a series of spiritual dominoes. It starts with a crime, a terrible wrong, committed in a past life, that forges this powerful karmic link between two souls. Then the victim dies, but their spirit, still clinging to all that pain and trauma, eventually seeks out their old aggressor who's been reborn. And that connection, that attachment, is what manifests in the present as what we would call a severe mental illness. It's wild. What looks like madness today is, in this view, just settling a very old score. So in this spiritual drama, you've basically got two key players, and they're locked in this really tragic struggle. First, you have the obsessed, that's Esther in this case, who is seen as a spiritual debtor from some past action. And then you have the obsessor, the spirit. They were once the victim, and now they're the pursuer. But, and this is key, they're also suffering, trapped by their own pain.
Okay, so if the cause of the problem is spiritual, then the solution has to be spiritual too, right? That's exactly what the book argues. So let's look at the path to healing it proposes. It's a process called désobsession or disobsession.
Now, this is a super important point. The book is very, very clear that this is not a violent Hollywood-style exorcism to cast out a demon. Not at all. It's described as a delicate, therapeutic process. It's more like spiritual therapy. The goal is healing for both souls through dialogue and moral education, helping them finally break free from their shared trauma.
And the text really emphasizes that this is not something you can just casually do. For it to work, it requires a seriously dedicated and morally disciplined team. Because you're dealing with subtle energies and deep spiritual wounds, things like the group's harmony, their deep understanding of the doctrine, and just sincere compassion, all of that is considered absolutely essential.
And here's a huge piece of the puzzle: the family. They aren't just passive bystanders watching from the sidelines. The book says they are almost always deeply tangled up in the original karmic problem. So for true healing to happen, they can't just drop the patient off for treatment. They have to get involved too in this process of moral renewal to help finally break that karmic chain.
Ultimately, the whole framework presented in Criollo's Partidos just completely reframes how we might think about mental suffering. It forces us to ask this one massive question: what does it mean to heal a mind when the wounds that are breaking it may not even belong to this lifetime? It suggests that the chains binding a soul might have been forged long, long before this life ever began, leaving us to wonder about the true nature of healing itself.